Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
All my vacation, all my free time. I started first just on the internet and talking to people. Then I ventured out to like a meetup group to talk to people in real life. And then someone said, you should come with me to this conference in San Francisco and I'll introduce you to a bunch of people. And then from then on, it was like, all right, this is where I'm supposed to be. So in 2015, I started CoinStructive, and it's changed a lot since then. It was a consultancy back then, just to kind of help people get into the space and understand what the technology is, how to use it. I was trying to onboard merchants, and a lot of failure. Several business models did not work over the course of time, but resiliency is one of the things that I value a lot in myself, and feel that without that resiliency, then it's easy to give up. But nothing comes without some pain, and some lessons along the way. And if you can have the right approach and perspective to it, it can be a lesson that you can utilize in the future in other ways.
Yeah, and it can be knowledge that you gain that's invaluable. Like you can't pay people for that kind of knowledge, from that experience.
I mean, you can read books about stuff, but until you go through it, right? Like, that's why I think a lot of times those books about business, or there might be like some slivers in there that you can pick up, but eventually it's going to come down to you and how you make the decisions, and how you look at the outcome, and where you want to take the direction of not only your life, but like this thing that you've created, right? That you're trying to get other people to also like believe it and be a part of. Otherwise, it won't become a success.
No, it's true. And you gotta get out there. You gotta skin your knee, right? You gotta do some things to and fail forward, fall short, those types of things, right? So that you can learn what not to do. You can also learn what to do, and that's where anytime I ever meet or interview people that own their own business, it's absolutely amazing what they learn from the experience of owning that business. And like you said, trying out different business models and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't. And you know what I mean? And sometimes you're ahead of your time, right? And the industry has to kind of catch up and that kind of thing. So CoinStructive started out as a consultancy, and then it's evolved from there. So talk about that evolution. What made that happen?
Part of it is the Bitcoin cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't understand how Bitcoin works in general, but every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that is released into the world gets cut in half. It's called the halving.
Right.
And it's every 10,000 blocks, the software that is written, the Bitcoin software, says, today the reward is X.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow the reward is X divided by 2.
Right.
And this happens every 4 years. So we started out, when the Bitcoin network first launched, it was 50 Bitcoins every 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
People were like, 50 Bitcoin, but they weren't worth anything.
Right.
Then it went to 25, right? 12 and a half, 6.25, 3.125, which is where we are right now.
Right.
Because of this nature of Bitcoin, it is deflationary.
Mm-hmm.
and when you talk about something that's deflationary, one, people don't want to usually get rid of it because it goes up in value. Now, the reason why does it go up in value almost predictively every 4 years is because the people who are producing the Bitcoin, the miners, are running essentially servers, right? So think about back in the day when the internet started. People are like, well, you got to run on servers. I go, what the heck is a server? I know what computers are. Well, servers are just specialized computers to run things for the internet.
Right.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I got it. What are miners? Miners run specialized computers, right, or equipment that does the checking of the transactions. And for this energy that they are putting out onto the network, which provides security, also, they are being rewarded with newly minted coins, Bitcoins in this instance, right? So you know that if you have a warehouse full of computers, servers running, you have the lights, the AC, you probably have a guy that's making sure things are plugged in. There's overhead, right? Well, you know what your costs are, plus the cost of machines, all this stuff. It's a cost, and you know approximately how much you're generating in revenue. Now imagine on today, your cost is X, and you can produce, Y amount of widgets. And tomorrow, your cost is still X, but you can only produce Y divided by 2 widgets, half as many.
Yeah.
How do you stay in business?
Right.
You can, no matter how hard you try, you just cannot produce more than half as many the next day. But your costs are the same. So what happens is people start unplugging machines, and then the hashing power goes down until it starts to find an equilibrium between your electrical costs and how much you're producing. But part of that is also that the cost of a Bitcoin starts to come up to match the cost of the production of the Bitcoin, because the people who are going to want to sell it are not going to want to sell it at a discount. So they might actually take business loans and hold on to those Bitcoins until the price of those Bitcoins actually goes up and then sell them later. It's a very difficult business to run on the mining side, but that is why every 4 years, the price of Bitcoin goes up because there's half as many being produced.
Right.
So inevitably, price starts to match, right, the cost of production, and that's why you can see it just keeps going up. So if you think about it, right, and past is not always an indicator of the future, right? But when the software is written that way, it's a pretty good idea that it's going to maintain that pattern, and it's been pretty steady. So we are actually in what we would call a new bull run cycle right now. And we're about 6 months after a halving. And between 6 months to a year after the halving is usually when the price goes bananas. So taking us back to why did your businesses not always work is because I was offering things to people when there was hype. It was a hype cycle. When there's a hype cycle and things are going up, everybody wants to catch the wave, and they all have money. When the price starts to turn and go down, people are like, uh-oh, like I guess the fun's over and I don't have extra money to spend. In fact, I'm actually upside down. I bought Bitcoin at, 15,000 and now it's at 8,000 and I'm freaking out. So now there's no extra money to spend, but people who bought it at 5 and rode it to 15 or 20 have all this extra money to spend. Right? So it becomes kind of this, you ride the wave of the Bitcoin boom bust cycle. And so my business models were not solid enough to make it through those boom bust cycles. And that is, something that eventually I've come to a business model that works through those cycles and is independent of whether the price of Bitcoin goes up or down, people's interest, right, in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, or the price doesn't have any impact necessarily. I mean, it's always going to have a little bit, but not like it used to, and that's where the stability has come from. but I wouldn't have learned that had I not gotten in. And that's why a lot of businesses don't survive in crypto for more than 2 to 4 years,
Right.
because they don't make it through a bust cycle.
So you were able to make it through more than one.
Yeah, I was. And I owe a great deal of that to a very supportive wife.
Oh, there you go.
So that's one of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't talk about is when the money's not coming in. Because at one point in 2019, so at the end of 2018, going in through 2019, I basically had to lay off everybody, and it was just down to me, and I didn't have anything coming in for about 9 months to a year, and I had pretty much eaten through all my savings. And right before the pandemic, I had about $220 in my checking account. And my wife was like, you need to go back to work. And I didn't want to go back to pharma. That industry does not resonate with me, and I would have been miserable. I was going to take a job at a gas station as a cashier because somebody in the crypto industry that I knew through a lot of these meetings and just networking in San Diego owns a network of gas stations. And he was like, look, I know this is not really what you want to be doing, but look, I can get you some hours. It's not going to be great pay, but I can, you need something to come in. I can help you out. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I was like, just let me get this weekend where the family has got this. My mom planned this trip with the grandchildren, and so my niece and nephew and sister and all these people, we were all going to Disneyland. It was going to be the kids' first trip to Disneyland. That was the weekend that COVID was announced. In March, Disneyland was shut down like the next Monday after that weekend. I ended up getting sick right after that. Like my dad was sick. Like probably ended up having COVID, but there were no tests then, right? Like it was so early. And then my wife goes, I don't want you working out with all these people in this environment. And right as that was happening, I started the investigation work. So the investigation work started coming in right as like for the month before that, it started slowly trickling in. And it wasn't even something that I had fully figured out a business model for. But it was like the first month I had one case, and then that was in January, and then in February I had 2 cases. And then all of a sudden things started to blossom, and by June I had 4 investigators working with me, and we were doing 15 cases a month out of nowhere. And all of a sudden I had a business model that was working. So, and it wasn't anything that I planned. It literally was handed to me because one of the business models that I had worked on before was education, continuing education for law enforcement. So I have an actual course in the state of California that's licensed by the state on cryptocurrency training for law enforcement.
Oh, wow.
But I was also there, but there's kind of 3 parts to getting an effective path for victims to recover either assets in general, which, well, the main path is you need you need bankers to understand what they're seeing when people are coming to the bank, because the victims are always having to at least try to withdraw cash at some point in the process to convert it to Bitcoin. They're either going to send it to an exchange or they're going to go into a branch and pull out a bunch of money, right? And go to a Bitcoin ATM and pop it into a Bitcoin ATM. So you gotta train the compliance people. So that's one of the things, and they have continuing education. So banking compliance professionals, lawyers, right, who kind of sit in that middle ground, usually working with victims, and then law enforcement. And those 3 things together, I felt would be a really benefit to general populace in moving things forward from an investigation standpoint. Nobody was interested in doing the education back then. You mentioned being too early.
Ahead of your time, right? Yeah.
Nobody wanted it. Now we get calls pretty regularly. But because of the relationships that I built during the training for law enforcement, I was able to get some access to blockchain forensics tools, which I would use during the trainings. And then they started referring victims to me. And I was like, I don't know why they're doing that. But they did, and then I started working cases. And so if I had never done the continuing education work, I wouldn't have been in a position
Right.
to have this new business model kind of thrust into me. And I also did legislative and regulatory stuff back, actually since 2016, kind of been involved in that space, because I felt like regardless of what you do in an industry, if you're trying to change careers, like how do you go from biotech to fintech?
Right.
I wore a lab coat and goggles. I made 3-dimensional protein structures for drug discovery. It was like building the puzzle box to give to the chemist so they could be like, oh, that's the binding pocket. The molecule I need to design needs to fit right in there. Thank you. Right? Like that was the work that we were doing. That doesn't relate to crypto, biotech, or fintech. So I had to learn a whole new set of skills. I had to learn a whole new everything. And I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur at the same time. But I gave myself that time, right? I didn't give myself that pressure, and I gave myself the opportunity to learn, and having a supportive wife who can help cover some of the costs as you go was instrumental to being into the place that I am now. Without that, I would have had to have gone back to work 100%.
It's true. Yeah. A lot of people don't talk about how unbelievably important it is to have a supportive spouse and have somebody that, is on your team, but also like one of your cheerleaders, right? Like somebody that believes in you. And, when times, being an entrepreneur is not easy. It is really rough. And
Having a voice of reason too, like someone else to help put things in perspective, because when you're in it every day,
yeah,
and as things get tighter, human nature is that the your field of view gets smaller and
you get
smaller.
myopic. You get myopic, and it's almost a requirement, right? If you're gonna succeed at a high level, you almost have to have blinders on. And the cool thing about it is, if you have the right spouse, that person can come from the outside looking in and go, okay, okay, okay. Let me take the blinders off for a second. What about this? Right?
Yeah.
And all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're looking at it and going, oh, I never saw that. That's been crossing my path and I never even recognized it. But it's that myopic nature, right? That it's just you focus and you go, right? And it's just one foot in front of the other. So you get into investigations, and the course that you wrote is for law enforcement. Can the general public take that course?
No, it's only offered through POST, which is
Oh,
Peace Officer Standards and Training, or Standardized
gotcha.
Training.
Gotcha. So it's only for law enforcement.
That one is, yes.
Okay.
And we kind of got away from education in general because, well, two reasons, I guess. One is there was no money. There's no money in it. And because honestly, most education should be free, right? If you're providing information to people about how things work and operate, then the goal would be more of them like they would come back to you because they trusted and verified the information that you gave them was accurate.
Right.
So we educate kind of as we go. But this part of you bring up education, and it's an important thing, which is part of the next venture that I'm working on, actually the Crypto Recovery Alliance, which is a nonprofit to help victims.
Oh,
And there's going to be a very big educational component there. So
yeah, it's definitely something that's needed. So CoinStructive is helping to investigate all kinds of things having to do with crypto. So talk about what CoinStructive is doing right now, and then what you're seeing it doing in the future.
so CoinStructive has two main service offerings. One is for the public, public facing, which is our investigation work. So we work directly with victims, and we do blockchain forensics, which is essentially blockchain analysis and tracing. So victim usually sends the funds to a suspect, right? They think it's a friend, or they send it to an exchange where they think they're going to invest and make money with the help of this online friend. And then that money usually is already gone, disappeared at that point. It's like it's part of the scam. They use it to pay other victims who think they're withdrawing. They'll use that money to continue their illegal operations. And so we track the funds. So we can kind of follow them because of the way a public blockchain works, is that the data is publicly available and recorded for all time. So with the use of some special tools, we're able to make the tracing hops easier and to get some attribution. Attribution is basically when you hit a wallet address as part of a transaction, there might be a label associated with it, such as an exchange. So if you're following the criminal activity, what you're looking for is an exit point, right? Because if you're exiting the crypto ecosystem for dollars or euros or whatever currency that is, right, in whatever jurisdiction you're in, you have to have some sort of off-ramp, which is an exchange, a Bitcoin ATM. It could be a network of peer-to-peer, like kind of like when you meet up in person and you just do an exchange. So there's lots of different options for people to complete these types of transactions. But the data is recorded for all time. So we're able to follow it. And then when you see something hit an exchange, like specifically, that is a key indicator that someone has opened an account, usually has information that they provided the exchange, which can be a point of either determining that this person is involved or not involved, and then also asking more information from or subpoenaing the exchange for more information. And now this can be done from a civil side, right? So like as an individual who has a lawyer who can start a case of their own, can then subpoena or ask for records as part of the discovery. Also, from a criminal investigation side, where law enforcement institutes or initiates the request from the exchange. So the reason you have to stop at an exchange is exchanges are just like banks when it comes to how they handle the funds that their customers deposit. But when you're looking at a blockchain, when you see the funds go into the exchange, usually the next hop out is that exchange distributing maybe 15, 20, 50 different customer withdrawals. So the funds get consolidated into like a big wallet. You can think about this like if you went to the bank and you took 10 $100 bills and you went to the bank and you walked in, you said, I'd like to deposit this into my account. That money goes into a vault somewhere, right? But it's also then like recycled. The guy who comes in behind you and gets $1,000 or $5,000, that money just might go right out to him.
Right.
You, as bank customers, we don't expect to go to the bank and get the same exact bills, like serial numberized. Where's my $1,000?
Right. Yeah.
Right? That's insane for us to even think
Right.
that way. This is how exchanges work.
Right.
On the crypto side, you deposit the funds, they consolidate them into a wallet, because you don't want to manage 1 million wallets for all your customers or 100,000 wallets. You want to manage a couple treasury wallets. Mm-hmm. Those funds flow into that next, and then from there they start to distribute those funds to customers who are withdrawing. Now, as an investigator, if I'm following these funds and I see the exchange and I see the next transaction is money leaving the exchange, my initial reaction.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.